Thank you so much. Looks like I need sharing permissions for the presentation.
One sec.
No worries.
Nancy got your back.
Well, thank you all for being here and for inviting me tonight. And special shout, John Legler, thank you for arranging this. For those who don't know, John is one of our rockstar net volunteers in Preston Kenilworth and one of our master instructors as well. I'll talk more about the net program in a moment. But I just wanted to thank him for making this happen, and all of you, of course. All right, slideshow loading. I'll be with you just now. So while I present, I cannot see you, so I apologize for that. But so I will not see questions, but certainly I'm more than happy to be. Interjections are welcome. I won't call them interruptions. Interjections are welcome.
Prefer that folks just jump in if they have a question
Yes,
instead of
please.
waiting to stand. Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yeah. So I only have a few slides. I think we have 4 bullet points, but I just want to, I'm
Okay.
always welcome to entertain thoughts when you have them. All right. So good evening. My name is Glenn Devitt. I work with the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, which I hope most of you have never heard of. We're a tiny little bureau. I'll talk about that in a second. So real quick, my points I was going to hit on tonight, I'll talk about, again, what PBEM is. So there's an acronym alert here. I work for the government and it is a professional hazard. So if I do use an acronym that I do not explain, please let me know. But PBEM is the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management. We'll also talk about BEECN, which is the basic earthquake emergency communication node system, and NET, neighborhood emergency teams. And lastly, I'll discuss our free community preparedness workshops, which we offer to anybody in Portland with a group of 8 or more uh, at your location. So we'll get to it. So PBEM, again, tiny little bureau you've never heard of, 12 people. We're located, this facility is out on Southeast 99th and Bush, east of 205 and just south of Powell. We are co-located with the Bureau of Emergency Communications, or BOEC, also known as 911. So we share a campus out there. It's where all the emergencies are managed. So our mission, just for context, like I said, with 12 people, our mission is 3 prongs, basically: readiness, response, and recovery. So readiness being preparing for bad things to happen. So training, community education like we're doing tonight. We do planning for the city, so floodplain planning, emergency transportation routes, all those sorts of things, those plans that need to be in place before terrible things happen. Response is when the thing occurs, be it anything from, goodness, a bad winter storm to COVID, to the earthquake. Those are all things that we are preparing for, always. And then recovery is the phase of the process where we reassemble things and put them back together into whatever the new normal is. So we're always in all 3 of these phases for different kinds of events at all times. COVID will have a forever tail. I'm not going to call it over because people are still getting ill, but we're in the not in the critical part of the incident anymore. Whereas a large fire, for example, that can be a few hours to a day or two. So it's a much shorter lifespan. So these things are always concurrent. That facility, as you can see, is not public, as you can tell by that gate. We don't kind of fling it open. But I describe this as the place where government goes to function when everything else breaks. So it's built like a little city unto itself. We have food, water, sanitation on site, power generation, satellite, everything. So it can function on its own when it's disconnected from everything. One of the reasons it's out so far east, which is not far east if you're in Southeast Uplift, but for some folks it is that downtown, where many people would expect something like this, is not a great place to be in a crisis. It's just you don't have the access to roads, and there could be more damage with the high-rise buildings, that sort of thing, especially in an earthquake. So out here, we're on very solid soil. We are, like I said, co-located with BOEX. We have the 911 capabilities right next door and built in. We can switch them over. We're also next to Ed Benedict Park, which is a pretty good place to land a helicopter if you have to. So the idea is, like I said, this is where government can come. So elected officials and state partners and federal partners can all come here to work. So it is roughly the safest building in Oregon. I get some pushback from PGE on that, but it's built to three times of all the seismic standards, and I mentioned all the capabilities it has. So I mentioned it just because it's good for, I think as a taxpayer, I like knowing we have this. It's a great thing to have in Oregon. It's unique. So the state is building their EOC, Emergency Operations Center or Emergency Coordination Center, depending on the acronym you choose. But ours is state of the art. So it opened 12 years ago last Friday. So um, your tax dollars at work. So it's good to have. All right, enough about PBEM unless you have questions. I'm
Glenn,
happy. Yeah.
I don't think it's presenting the slides. I see just the like side scrolly view.
Oh, no. I apologize. I'm sharing the wrong thing. Thank you for letting me know. So now are you seeing the large slide?
Not yet.
It's
Huh.
There we
loading. There we go.
go.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, that's all you missed. You missed the agenda, which was the four bullet points. There we go. And we did the first one. Thank you for letting me know. I apologize. Too many screens. And we're all new to this Zoom thing. It's only been 6 years, right? So that's PBEM. Any questions, or I'm happy to answer at the end as well. So we will move on to BEECN, Basic Earthquake Emergency Communication Nodes. So this system was created in, I believe, 2013, if I'm not mistaken, at the behest of then Mayor Sam Adams. It is basically designed to solve the problem of communication after a major earthquake. So, in any disaster, the public receiving information is extraordinarily important. We've all been stuck on an airplane where they don't tell you why you're not taking off, right? It's the most frustrating thing. In a crisis, it's even worse. So, this system is designed to solve that. So, it is activated only after an earthquake when all other communications are down. So, cell phones don't work, can't really broadcast on TV, and nobody has power anyway. This system spins up and it is volunteer run. So these are 50 locations across Portland. If you go to that URL top of the screen, portland.gov/beacon, you can type in your address. There's a locator there. And you can also use portlandmaps.com if you're familiar with that website. You can type in your address and it will tell you where your closest beacon is. So you should know for home, for work, wherever you spend a lot of time and might be when an earthquake hits. So what happens is within 24 to 48 hours after the earthquake, the plan is for volunteers to go to these locations and spin them up. So they're already trained, they know where the equipment is. The equipment is not actually at the locations identified in this map. It is, of course, stored securely nearby, and those volunteers have access to it, so they know the codes. So they will go and pick up this equipment and go to the site in the park or wherever it may be, somewhere in schools, somewhere at parks, and they will be there to communicate information out from the government primarily. So, what hospitals are open? Where's the water? Where's the shelter? That's the kind of information the public needs, right? Our volunteers also can use these sites to communicate into us at the Emergency Operations Center. But primarily, this is not a place to go to say, I want to call my mom in Colorado. That's not the idea because with 600,000 people in the city, we couldn't possibly maintain that traffic on radio. But it is a place to find out what's happening. So it has one of those emergency information pop-up tents that you can see there. And yeah, so that's the idea behind it. So it is we're retooling the training right now. So the training isn't available at this very moment, but my colleague Jeremy Van Kuren and I are working on it and expect to have it up, I think, within, I want to say by the end of the month, but don't hold me to that. But it is an hour and a half training. Once you go through that, it teaches someone how to use the radio. We do it virtually, most of the trainings, and all the protocols to follow. And we have the volunteers not only run these when they break, but also do checks monthly and quarterly. We test the system to make sure it's always working and fix things that break because they do, even radios. So that's the idea behind it is to have the system. I think I'm aware of only two others in the country. One is in Seattle, and I'm forgetting the third city that has something like this. So again, it's a very unique program to Portland, and good to know that we have it if we need it. So any questions on BEECN?
Yeah, I had a quick question. This is Nancy. I'm just wondering if someone was interested in going through that training, are there any sort of prerequisites for what they should think about? Like I'd imagine like if there is something that goes down that it's like how will people get there? And like
Mm.
even just assembling people could be a challenge. So if you could just talk very briefly about any
Sure.
considerations people might want to consider before volunteering on something like that.
Sure. So the only real qualification is being a resident of Portland or working here, actually. If you work here, it could be here during an accident or during an earthquake, you could volunteer at the system. And then the requirement is a basic criminal background check, which we require of all of our volunteers because you have access to the equipment and sensitive information. So that is a requirement for all our volunteers. As far as getting to the site, yeah, that's the challenge, right? That's why I mentioned knowing where your site is for home and for work. Same thing with our volunteers. We have redundancy. We're aiming for redundancy in the system to have at least 8 people dedicated to each site. We are not at that goal yet, but we fill that in simply by training people who are interested. So whether the goal is to really, I believe these sites are all within a 2-mile walk of most locations in Portland. For those of us who are fortunate to be able to walk well after an earthquake, it should be within approximately that 2-mile walk. So that's how our volunteers will also get there. And they're not carrying a lot of equipment. It's basically radio equipment. So it's a small little kit that we've shrunk the size down to. Does that answer the question, Nancy?
Yeah, thank you. And I dropped a link to the website if people are curious which one's closest to them.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't have access to the chat. And it's annoying when people try to use chat while they're presenting. So thank you. All right, so that's the gist of BEECN. Again, strongly encourage folks to get trained. It's really not a heavy lift. And then it's nice to meet your neighbors. The teams will go usually together at least once a quarter, preferably monthly, but at least once a quarter to check the equipment. And then we'd also do drills well, we have formally done them 3 to 4 times a year due to budget cuts. We all know the story. We are short staffed, so we've reduced that a little bit, but I think we're going to have the volunteers actually run those drills more often themselves without staff having to be involved because that's the point of the system, right? It should work without us. So, all right. I will move on to neighborhood emergency teams. So this is actually what brought me to the entire business. Um, John and I met as volunteers years and years ago. I'm not going to say how many. Um, I didn't know I didn't have full head of hair, but anyway. Um, Neighborhood emergency teams. I think one of the things that occurred to me when I moved here from New York in 2007, 2008, uh, was, how beautiful the place is and the mountains are lovely. And then you find out that there's an earthquake coming someday, right? And they've happened before, they will happen again. So our choices are to either be scared or to do something about it. So net is for people who choose to do something about it and put it shortly. So what it is 28 hours of training. So it's four weekend days is how we do it. It's a flexible Saturday, Sunday schedule. You can pick your own shift once we announce a cohort. Um, and Nets are trained to provide emergency assistance in their own neighborhoods. So we know as a fact globally that in an emergency, 95% of people in a major disaster are rescued by their neighbors, not by professionals, by their neighbors. Just because if you do the math, at any given time in Portland, there are about 180 firefighters on duty. So in a major earthquake, there are 600 plus thousand people. They're not coming for all of us. That's not a flaw. It's not a failure. That's just we couldn't possibly staff enough firefighters to rescue everyone after an earthquake. So the solution is we recognize that neighbors will help neighbors. And the whole point of NET is to have them not get injured doing it. So to be effective responders, not to become patients, right? That's the goal. This program, if you're from other places in the country, is called CERT, CERT, or Community Emergency Response Teams. Little side note here, the police SWAT team is called SERT. So you would not want to confuse one of those certs with the other cert and get the wrong one showing up. So we call ourselves NET. That's the reason for the name change. But again, if you're from another jurisdiction, you may have heard of CERT. So, yeah, some of the training, this isn't all of it, but fire safety and utility control. So our volunteers use a fire extinguisher. If you've never used one, you will use it in training. We talk about power shutoff, water, gas, light search and rescue. So safely extricating people from, for example, in that bottom photograph is a 1,000-pound concrete slab. And this is one of John's specialties. He teaches this unit and administers those exercises. And you learn very easily how to, well, easily once you know how to move that 1,000 pound block of concrete with steel levers and cribbing, which are those wooden blocks. But this is a great way to get hurt or a great way to rescue someone. If you know how to do it properly, you're a rescuer. If you do it improperly, you become the patient. So that's why we teach people that. First aid, of course, we go through that, and medical triage. So triage being identifying who needs care and prioritizing that care. Um, Disaster psychology is critical, both during and after incidents, helping people deal emotionally with what's happened, and also helping team members and yourself. That's key for our program. Our number one rule is your safety comes first as a net volunteer, period. So disaster psychology is part of that, and making sure we maintain our own emotional well-being. Community education. So this is part of it tonight, right? So I'm here as a volunteer tonight. Thank you very much. And I love it. And I'll talk more about another key way we do community education next in the next slide. Radio communication. So that it can be ham communications. We have an extraordinary group of ham operators, amateur radio operators, who are technically proficient beyond any capability I could ever dream of. And they are so critical to the program. They actually staff our radio room in the Emergency Operations Center, the building I showed you earlier. In a crisis, they staff that room. We have, I think, 5 or 6 of them who are background checked, and they actually have city badges to get into that facility when necessary. So that's the extent to which this program is an integral part of emergency response in Portland. Um, yeah, we wouldn't be able to, we don't have enough staff to maintain the radio room functionality while we're doing everything else we have to do. So we have nets to do that. And then terrorism, of course, is something else we all think about, and the various ways we consider that. We do not send into terrorist events. We would never do that. We don't go into hazmat events, but we are educated about what to identify and what to look out for and how to keep our neighbors safe in those kinds of events. And there's more that I'm forgetting too, but that's enough for one bullet point. Um, so there's a carrot and stick method to this, right? So our carrot is free advanced training. So active nets gain access to these courses and more for free. So CPR, typically $100. We provide that for free to our volunteers. Wilderness first aid is a 3 day or 2.5 day medical training. Um, the word wilderness is a little bit of not a misnomer, but the idea behind wilderness first aid is that you can render assistance to people in medical emergencies when you cannot get them to a hospital. So if you're 2 hours from care, we consider that the wilderness. And if you think about it, after a major earthquake, you're probably more than 2 hours from care. So that's why we've adopted wilderness first aid as the gold standard for net training. Again, John is an instructor in that. See, you can do a lot in that. Um, De-escalation training. So if you're working with people who are agitated or upset, de-escalation skills are critical. And animals and disasters, pet care is a huge thing. So these are just some examples of the advanced trainings we offer. And that's at no cost. So it's the benefit of becoming a net and staying one. I will also highlight on this last bullet point, one of the ways Portland is very unique with our program. Again, I mentioned CERT nationwide. Portland is unique in that we invest in our volunteers in an ongoing way. So we mostly it's been federal money in the past that we get, and we're still doing okay on that front for what we have now, fingers crossed. Um, that's how we pay for a lot of this advanced training. But if you go to other locations, what they'll do is what we call more like catch and release. It's a little bit derogatory, I apologize, but they'll train a volunteer as a CERT or a net volunteer once, and then that's it. These skills, unfortunately, are perishable. So if you don't keep up your training, you're not going to be able to operate safely. So that's why one of the reasons we offer advanced training, so people can specialize, they can increase their skills. And we all know when we show up and we work with other nets, we all know their skills are current and that we can rely on each other. If you took this training in 1994 when the program started and you haven't trained since, you're probably not very competent as a responder just because we forget these skills. So that's good to know about our program is that we really do require people to invest at least 12 hours a year to maintain their active status to deploy.
I have a question.
Shoot.
Um, let's say we want to organize like a basic CPR uh, training. let's say for the board of Southeast Uplift or as a Southeast Uplift event, what do we need to do in order to make that happen?
You need to become nets.
Oh.
We don't have the funding to do community group CPR training. It costs
Hmm.
hundreds of dollars per class.
Hmm.
The reasons for that are one, the funding. Fire and rescue used to do it before COVID, and even they don't do it anymore. So in that case, private options are your best bet through Red Cross. I mean, they are not cheap.
Hmm.
Um, so unfortunately, we just don't have the capacity or the funding to do it for groups who are not involved within the program. There are exceptions to that. We do have what's called a COAD, which is the Community Organizations Active in Disaster. So that's a group of nonprofit, community-based organizations that we partner with who have a role in response. Folks like Meals on Wheels and the Diaper Bank, Apano, who have specific roles within emergency management. So we partner with them and we do train some of their staff as well. But unfortunately, we just don't have the capacity or the cash to train everybody who wants to have it. I wish we did. I really wish we did, but we just can't.
All right, fair enough, fair enough.
Sorry, not the answer you wanted, but it's the honest one.
All right.
But I like the way you're thinking. So that's the net program in a nutshell. Just time check myself. Okay. Um, so then the other thing, so maybe I mean this is could be something. Oh, so yeah, sorry. I want to show you. I've been talking about the earthquake. So as you can probably guess, I've never deployed nets to an earthquake in my 8 years at the Bureau. But other things we do are very impactful as well. So this is an example of some of you may remember in 2016, the gas explosion on 23rd and Gleason leveled that building. I'm very pleased to say that no one was killed in that explosion, which is just astonishing, really remarkable. But the point is, when Portland Fire and Rescue got there, they obviously do their job. They have the scene, they put out the fire and all that. But they do not have enough staff to maintain the safety perimeter that was required in this multi-block area, and people had to be evacuated. So they immediately called us and said, we need nets. So we sent net volunteers to do exactly that. They maintain the perimeter. You can see on the right side, helping people evacuate, carrying their belongings. It was also cold. So we got, I believe, TriMet buses to have people just have a warm space to be in until we could move them somewhere more permanent. So nets were critical in this role. Something else we've done. Some of you may remember the Labor Day fires in 2020, I would imagine. We all know that that's not a Photoshop filter on the sky there. This was the evacuations from those massive fires in the gorge. So what happened in this case was Clackamas County called Portland Emergency Management and said, hey, at Clackamas Town Center, we have a lot of people, hundreds, I believe, of RVs who are evacuating, and that's where they're going. That's where we're having them go to congregate. So interesting, Clackamas is a different demographic, and a lot of people do have RVs, so they were able to take a house with them, right, as opposed to just evacuating to a shelter. So that was good for them. But now we had to manage that camp. So Clackamas called PBEM and said we need help because they were at that time a smaller department than we are. And we said we'd love to help, and we don't have the resources to do it. So we called Nets. And I can tell you that for 5 days, 24/7, it's the only time we've operated around the clock so far. Nets actually ran this camp. So we have Nets who are specially trained in leadership and are certified to run the team leader position or incident team leader position. And they manage that camp. So we always had a staff member there at all times. So I was probably off to the side of this picture in my truck. And what I did when I was there for my 12 hours was basically take orders from the net who was running the show and get them stuff. They wanted showers, they needed more water, we had to have food arrangements. So they were coordinating the entire operation. I was basically providing resources that I had access to from the city and the counties. You see the Salvation Army was there too, and the Salvation Army is great at what they do, but they don't do this. So they were actually operating under the command of NET and PBEM. So sometimes I think people think of NET as maybe sounds fun to do or nice to do on weekends, but no, it's a very serious component of emergency preparedness in this region and how we respond. It's baked into all of our plans in the city and county. So that's Labor Day fires. It's 2019. We had a major water main break, the largest in Portland history, 23rd and Skidmore. You may remember this. A couple of us were there. I was in the Portland Fire and Rescue Command Post, which is sounds glorious and it's just a trailer. But the point is, you're in a trailer and you can't see outside. So we again had our nets maintaining safety perimeters here to keep people out of the water and vehicles and that sort of thing. Um, so me being in that trailer, I can't see my volunteers on the ground, right? My fellow volunteers on the ground. So we had appointed a net to be that person running the ship. She would make sure that they rotated in, make sure that they had their breaks, make sure that everyone was safe, and maintaining communication via radio at all times. So that's part of what nets were doing there. I'm gonna say fun fact, but not so fun fact. On that left side, that is the break itself. And much of what we did was have to tell parents that it was a bad idea to have their children swimming in the street in water wings. So yeah, that was a cringeworthy moment. That's clean water when it comes out of the pipe, and about 2 feet away, it's called sewage. So anyway, next one is COVID. So Nets did a tremendous amount of work during COVID. I don't know how many tens of thousands of hours were logged in many ways. So this is a group who created care packages. So we partnered with Meals on Wheels to do distribution because they're very good at that. And our volunteers created care packages. There was the Portland Mask Project. Again, John can tell you about that. We PBM ordered fabric, and that was it. The volunteers received that fabric, researched all the patterns, made 15,000 masks, those triple layer masks when that was the advice, distribute them back to PBM. And it was a really weird system because at the time, you'll remember, we weren't interacting with each other. So we would order the fabric, they would cut it up, they would package it in Ziplocs and let it sit for a couple days and move it to the next person or so. And then ultimately we would pick it up and they got distributed to 15,000 folks, mostly children, underserved children in the Portland area. Massive, massive project. And again, completely volunteer run. We needed it, but there is not government capacity to do things like that and spin on a dime. So they did that. Again, these are the care packages that were done. And then that's also, I believe it's coming up later. They also worked at vaccination clinics. If you did a drive-through vaccination clinic, you probably saw a net directing traffic when you were there. So this is emergency weather shelters. When the county and the city spin these up in heat and cold, we specially train volunteers to go in and work at them. It's critical work. It's difficult work, as you might imagine. Folks who are not well served in the best of times need to be served even better in the worst of times when it's dangerous to be outside. So nets are trained to not only work in these shelters, but some have again qualified to run them, to be the person in charge or pick the PIC. So yeah, so we're retooling the training now, and we all know that's in the news about the programs for shelters, but the nets keep going, and we keep doing the work that needs to get done when it is required. So that's something we do. Down power lines. So this doesn't seem all that glamorous, but you may have seen nets at these as well. The reason behind this is that when Portland Fire and Rescue gets a call for a down power line, they arrive on the scene. It is a public health threat, danger with a down power line if it's live. But they are not trained or qualified to manage down power lines. So basically, they have to sit there and make sure no one goes near it. That's what fire and rescue does. It's a really bad use of trained firefighter EMTs to have them sit in a truck watching a power line. So what they'll do is they'll call us and say, we want nets. We hear that a lot. And we'll deploy nets to go to the scene. They will meet the fire crew there, often within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and they will take over the scene. So the fire department tapes it off, and then the nets are there to warn people to not walk into it and that sort of thing. Now the point here is that then frees up that fire crew to go back into service. So there are the maximum of 32 crews on duty at any given time. And if you take one or two, or last winter we had the ice storm, there were 700 trees down around Portland. Fire would have been doing nothing but sitting there watching power lines. So nets really went out and did that job to let fire and rescue get back to their work. So again, the volunteers are a key part of the system to maintaining safety.
And I have a question about
Yes,
that.
sure.
I'm just curious, what's the dispatch like on that? Do you try to reach the net team that's closest in proximity to, say, a downed power line, or
Mm.
is there like a broader call for help that's put out?
Yeah, it depends. So yes, we certainly try to deploy people locally. So I don't want someone from Northwest Portland or St. John's coming to a lines down power line, right? That takes too long. So we do have our capability. We can circle in and deploy basic teams. We can deploy by home address, and we can alert people. We send them text, message, and phone and email. And we have an online system where they can go in and sign up for a shift and then deploy immediately. So our goal is once I get that call, I like to have nets alerted within 12-ish minutes, and have them get rolling out to that scene, hopefully in half an hour. Within half an hour from the time I get the call is our goal. Yeah, thanks for that. I know the deployment is we go through a lot of the technical and we demonstrate the back side admin of that in the trainings for nets so they understand exactly how that process flows. So this is another down power line in winter. I'm not sure why I have this in there, but it's just another example. That's doing the work. This one just reminds me about the pet deployment, although we don't actually deploy dogs. Who knows in the future, but it reminds us about the animal care that's necessary. This was a volunteer at one of those COVID drive-through clinics I mentioned, that vaccination clinics. The nets actually arrived here, and OHSU showed up as well, ready to run it, and the contracted plowing company had not shown up, which means you couldn't run this vaccination clinic. So these nets, who are all local because again, it was bad weather, they were all deploying locally. They ran home, grabbed their shovels, and shoveled a lot. I mean, we don't usually do that. We don't deploy nets to shovel streets and lots, but in this case, they knew the vaccination clinic was not going to open if they didn't do it, so they did. So nets step up and heed the call. And then, so last fun one. Public outreach. So we often staff first aid tents at nonprofit public events like the Rose Festival. This is the Mermaid Parade. And so there's a ambulance usually at these events required by permit. And then they also need first aid tents to meet their permit requirements. So we will have nets do that. We also do looking at doing some street fairs this winter, this summer, I think Hawthorne probably, and maybe others. So our nets will be there. So mostly it's scraped knees and people who are hot and need an ice pack. But it's also a great opportunity to do outreach, as you can see here. So our nets are showing up as community members and neighbors, and they can talk to the folks uh, at the events. See a hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this. So as you know, I'm really into biking and stuff for the people who know me. So I was wondering, how do you choose these events to support them, and if you have any support capacity for like huge cycling events, such as like the naked bike
Um,
ride or
hmm,
such really, really big events.
sure. One, ask us. We evaluate case by case. Two, it has to be a permitted event. It can't be a spontaneous or unplanned route or something like that. So Rose Festival, Mermaid Parade, naked bike ride, we couldn't do because to my knowledge, that's not announced in advance on purpose. Um,
No, it is announced quite in
the,
advance.
yeah, but the route, I don't think. Or maybe I'm wrong.
The route, well, you could talk to the organizers, they'll let
Yeah,
you know. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we're open to considering events as they come up. But yeah, it is not so certainly not anything for profit or a business venture. We wouldn't do that. Um,
Yeah. But do you have any capacity to provide medical services not with a car?
you mean transportation?
Well, you said you provided some ambulance stuff, right?
Oh, no,
Is
no.
that
I'm sorry. I wasn't clear. So typically a permit will require a professional like an ambulance or an EMT to be there and
Mhm.
additional support like first aid. So for example, the street fairs, when they get their special use permit, I know well you understand this, so I'll go into the details. When they get their special use permit, it does require a medical plan, and that does require either something like an AMR ambulance or fire and rescue staff, somebody with like EMT level qualifications. So net supplement that with first aid to be the folks who are the kind of the face on the in the event, because that one EMT can't maybe cover the entire Hawthorne, Boulevard parade or something like that.
And how do these people get around with all the equipment?
We deliver in the morning, we pick it up at night. They aren't moving around, so they're stationary in a tent,
Oh, okay.
which is also the best way for the crowd to know where it is. It's always in the same place. They're not rotating around.
All right.
So,
Okay, thanks.
since you mentioned bikes, I also have to add we have 16 different specialty areas, general areas for nets. One of them is transportation, and cargo bikes are a big deal during an earthquake. That's probably how things are going to move around when the streets are broken. So, just a tip for bicyclists out there if you're interested. Um, yeah. So those are some examples of what nets do. Again, you're welcome to sign up. So the way the process works is people complete an application. I think we have about 3,600 right now who have applied. It is not a line. It doesn't mean you go to the end of the line. You join the pool. And then when we announce a cohort, we can fit about 120 people in it per class. We try to do them 3 or 4 times a year. And when I announce the cohort, whoever's eligible has signed up and completed a 2 hour prerequisite training online, then you can sign up for the classes and take them. So that's the way it works. And then it's 4 weekends. And yeah, so if you're interested, get in the queue or get in the pool. And typically, sometimes people sign up and then the next class works for them. I've had some folks it takes 4 years before it actually fits their calendar. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We will not um, delete applicants from the database. If someone is interested, they can stay and get the notifications as long as they like until it works for them. So strongly encouraged. So that's net. I just want to make a time check. I'm almost done here. Last slide. Are we good on time?
Yeah, I think we have some time.
Okay, great. So the last thing I want to pitch to you is emergency workshops for the community. So we get a lot of requests, as you might imagine, from folks who want to get better prepared, more than the staff could ever possibly do. I think we've managed over 50 in the past 6 months. Uh, we don't do them, we arrange them. So what we've done, we have a speakers bureau of specially trained nets. I trained another 40 last week, I think. So we have this 75-minute presentation, and those speakers who are trained, we provide them the slides and a lot of information, supporting information to go with it and knowledge. And they will come present these workshops to community groups, 8 people or more, um, home, work, any place. We've done them in living rooms. We've done them in large halls for businesses. We'll do it for anybody who asks. As long as there's no charge for it, we'll come. So no selling tickets, but but we will come do this for folks, and it covers all these topics and more: kits, storing food and water, seismic retrofitting. We touch on, and an important consideration. A lot of emergency prep information out there is for standalone homes, and we all know 60% of Portland are renters, and many live in multifamily buildings. So we have a nod to that as well. We address the issues of storage and coordinating with your neighbors in what we call vertical neighborhoods, emergency sanitation, which is critical, and a lot more. So if you're interested for this group, for any group, any community group, are welcome to invite us. It is 75 minutes, so we stick to that hour and a quarter. I have people often ask, can you do it in 30? And the answer is no, we can't. It's not to be mean or be bureaucratic. It's because in order to properly provide even this level of information, we need the time and people need to be able to ask questions. So if we try to cut it short, we're not doing our job. We're not giving you the information you need, and it provides a false sense of security, I'm afraid, or it raises more questions than it answers. So that's why we do require that hour and a quarter. But anybody who wishes to request it in Portland can use that link. The county does something similar, but if you want a net volunteer to come, and we also try to assign neighbors. So if it's in a community, we'll give priority to someone who's trained to do this in that community. So hopefully you can make some connections that way.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned briefly, and I didn't want to ruin your flow, but you
No
mentioned
problem.
something about a cargo bike and bike trailers.
Uh-huh.
So my question would be if there's, I mean, I was part of the DRT
Great.
in 2022, and they're not doing the stuff anymore because
Mhm.
Mike has moved away. I was just wondering if you're doing anything regarding emergency preparedness with bikes at the moment, and
Mhm.
what would it take to like bring DRT back to Portland.
Right. For those who don't know, DRT is disaster relief trials. It was a really impressive exercise of people with cargo bikes doing a course around the Portland, hauling really heavy stuff, lifting their bikes over obstacles, simulating what it's like to respond after an earthquake. It's a great event. Yes, you're right. The organizer did move away. We do have a net in St. John's, I believe, who is working maybe at stage 1.5 of resuscitating that and starting again. So
Mhm.
if you're interested, poke me and I'll put you in touch with them and see if I'm sure he's looking for collaborators because that's not a one person job. But yeah, we would love to see that come back. Again, it's staff time is not there, but they
Yeah.
can do this. It's great.
Well, I was hoping on maybe considering like applying for a grant maybe with Southeast Uplift or some other organization
Yeah.
because I know that that stuff kind of cost a little bit of money. So
Everything costs money.
yeah, yeah. So just wondering what would it take? So you're saying that you have a guy in St. John's?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he the same question you, why don't we do this anymore? And I said, we can if you do this.
Yeah. So other than that event, right now you're not doing anything with that right now,
We are
or
not, no.
all
We
right.
have a proof of concept bike at PBEM that we have, but we don't
Hmm.
yeah, we don't.
The ambulance.
Right. Yes,
Yeah,
you've seen
I've seen it. Yeah.
it.
Yeah, there's a link in the chat if you want to see what it looked like.
Great, great.
Yeah,
Yeah, that cart ambulance, it was great.
sure.
I see
Um,
John's hand up too. John, do you want to go ahead and jump in with your question?
Yeah, I just have a comment here. There was a person in the chat who was wondering uh, whether they might be more of a hindrance than an asset as a net team member because of their age and uh, some hearing problems and things. And since I'm now 76 and have hearing aids, I, I would like that to be addressed because my attitude is there's absolutely a place for everyone in net response.
yeah, thank you, John. Thanks for the question from the person in the chat. Thank you for elevating it. Yes, absolutely. I cannot emphasize hard enough how true that is, what John just said. I mentioned 16 different areas. So there's a running joke. There's a video of a net deployment, and the most commonly used tool in that is a clipboard, because people are making plans and coordinating the team. So it's yeah, our current age range is I just had a birthday, so 15 to 92 active nets. That's the age range currently. This weekend, I had a wonderful person in our um, graduating class who actually addressed the group at the end. She asked me if she could talk to him because she's 83, has pretty significant arthritis, and she walks with two sticks. And she was concerned, same thing, that she thought she didn't really have a role or anything to do here. She came to the final exercise and well, no, she was not, lifting people and doing that. But that, honestly, that's such a tiny part of network. We don't go transporting patients a lot. That's an earthquake thing. But all those things I showed in that deployment, a lot of those are certainly things that folks of most physical capabilities can do. Team leading is really critical. Being a team leader, having those organizational skills to keep a group organized and motivated is fantastic. We have a great radio operator who uses a wheelchair full time. I was in a training once doing search and rescue with a gentleman who said, you wouldn't know it because I don't have my dog or my cane, but I'm legally blind. And he said, but I bet I'd be really good at search and rescue in a dark room. I said, yeah, I bet you would. I'll follow you in. So their way, I challenge anyone who thinks they're not able to contribute to that in a meaningful way that means something to them to let me know and we'll find something. I promise that there's a role. Disasters affect everyone and everyone is required to work with them. Um, Leads me to a thought. We have another training coming up for PCEP, Person-Centered Emergency Preparedness, I believe. Um, Basically serving adults and children with functional needs. So it's not only serving people who are perceived to have disabilities, but also integrating them into the plans and the response. So it's not this, you need our help thing. It's how can we all do this together? And that's not just happy speak. That's actually, it's necessary to do emergency preparedness properly and emergency response. So thank you for that question and a chance to rant about it. So that's what I got. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
I see Sherry has her hand up.
Hi there. Question and a comment. Number one, what organization does your wilderness first aid? I was curious.
So that's an interesting thought. I'm gonna knock the slides off if that's all right, so I can see y'all. We use HSI, Health Safety Institute, for our certifying or accrediting body, which is the same one that Portland Fire and Rescue uses. So we're aligned on that. So we are an official training center, capital T, capital C. What we've done in order to offer that training is a train the trainer model. So again, I can't teach all those classes. So what we've done is we invested in nets. I think 18, John's one of them, who we put through Wilderness First Responder training, which is the 80-hour class and the $1,000 class. So we invested in them to take that, and then they were obligated to teach Wilderness First Aid, which is the 2-day class. So we qualified them in all the curriculum and the certifications so that they can teach the WFA class to other volunteers, WFA.
Cool. And then just a comment. This is somewhat anecdotal, but last spring, my block had a block party, and I set up a table and did a bunch of like earthquake prep information. I set up like a little quiz about, what to do if you're in bed when an earthquake happens, how much water should you have stored, what's a beacon site. We also invited some firefighters to our block party so that the kids could see a cool, shiny fire truck.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like three of the firefighters took the quiz and did really horribly. Like they did not seem to have any like a beacon site. Like they, like
Yeah.
earthquake preparedness, they really, I mean, it's just three of them. It's a small sample size, but they just really didn't. It was concerning to me that they didn't seem to have any earthquake prep training. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to throw that out there that if there's anybody in the community I want prepared, it would be firefighters because, number one, they should be like directing people, right? And number two, if they and their families are taken care of, they're going to be more likely to show up for their jobs, knowing that their families are taken care of. If there's kind of one of these long range catastrophic things like an earthquake, so it's possible there's a bunch of firefighters out there without basic earthquake training, and I just thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, they do get all the Chinese trucks and all the cool stuff kids want to play on. I know, disappointing. But yeah, so the goal, actually, part of NET's integration into the citywide plan is to be Portland Fire and Rescue's eyes and ears on the ground. They've requested that from us. We have a phone app. I'm not going to get into it now, but we have different ways, including the Beacon site, to take reports from NETs to inform Portland Fire and Rescue operations. Their goal, I mean, historically, their intent has been to do what they call windshield surveys, meaning drive a prescribed route around neighborhoods after an earthquake. I think you and I can agree that driving any prescribed route is probably not a great idea. It's just not reliable after roads start to crack. Um, so yeah, so we do educate them. They're aware of nets insofar as we can support them. We have not done, you're correct, we've not done, as far as I know, direct education about the earthquake. We've educated them about the program, so they should know about nets and beacons. I'm clearly you found some who did not, but we have a roll call video that is played for them at least a couple times a year. So when they report to a shift, there's a video we produce that explains the system to them. But yeah, it's a good point. I'll have to reach out to our liaison there and see if what kind of basic emergency prep they're concerned with. Thank you for that.
I have a question. So I was wondering, let's say I'm in a neighborhood association and we don't have a John Legler, and we just wanna support that. We might not have the bandwidth to or someone that's willing to go do the whole courses and everything. But we want to do something. We want to support. We want to be involved. What can a neighborhood association do?
Good question. So I would suggest that that emergency preparedness workshop for and advertise that to your constituents because it's really even with our nets, we prepare for citywide, but our response will be start with our block. Every individual will start with their neighbors. You don't go beyond that. Like Cherry said, you start with your house and then you work out from there in concentric circles. So it's really that block by block preparedness. We do support folks with the Party on Portland events in the summer when people can get the free, well, I guess you get them free now anytime for block parties. So our nets will show up and do that kind of education. And it's really that neighbor to neighbor education. That's where associations and Southeast Upland could really support is getting the word out, letting people know what resources are available. So we'll come to those parties, we'll do these presentations and give them some basics. And really, the key here is knowing your neighbors. Um, it's not meeting somebody in the street at 3 in the morning in the rain after a terrible thing has happened. You don't. I always say you don't have to love them and invite them to dinner, but you should know your neighbors beforehand so that you at least have some commonality of you know what needs are and who's are you authorized to pick up your neighbor's kids from school and that sort of thing. Those are really important things to consider, and we cover all that in the workshop.
So let me just get understand if I got it right. So the neighborhood association should invite you to block parties. Is that what I'm hearing you is the
Sure.
recommended thing to do?
Yeah, so specifically, we partner with, forgetting which organization does it, and within the city. The Party on Portland is the program where they do, I think, 50 elk, and we have nets at most of those. So when you fill out the form for that, there's a checkbox, and I want fire, I want police, I want a net, and we're one of the options on there. So strongly encourage that. I don't really have an intake method for one-off parties. We try to partner with things like that that are more organized just because anyone can close a block on a summer day and have a party. We want to make sure our volunteers are going to something where people are inviting them and it's worth their time. We want to respect our volunteers' time always. So
So like not the small block parties, like something like an event that's sponsored by the local NA.
yeah,
It's like for
would be
200
ideal.
people.
If you're talking about tabling, yeah, something like that would be great. And small block parties are okay. Like I said, those party ons are usually a block or two. That works.
Or
Yeah.
perhaps like the neighborhood picnics,
Sure.
or what about a like a movies in the park event with those?
Yeah, so we movies in the park is different because Parks and Rec does have people pay for sponsorships, so we don't just show up and table. I mean, we're certainly we partner together. We're both city agencies, but we don't just go pass house stuff. But we have had occasions where we will co-sponsor certain events. But typically, those events actually aren't great for tabling. We actually don't focus on things like Sunday parkways anymore because people are not focused on the message. I mean, if you're out to have a good time and someone starts talking about the earthquake, it's often not where you're gonna follow. So it's part of the reason we created these workshops was people are focused and inviting and they're interested, as opposed to us handing a piece of paper it's going to end up in the trash or worse in the gutter. So
So say you're someone that is here tonight or you're watching this, we're recording it so we can share this around, but say you're like super excited, you want to get involved, but you also want to like team up with your neighbors to
mhm.
be like a cohort in your neighborhood. What's the process for that? Is there a bare minimum for a group getting together? What would your advice to be for folks that want to rally their neighbors?
Sure. Do you mean to get together to become nets or to just have
Yeah, to have
yeah.
like a net team within their neighborhood association or another community-based group.
Mm. Okay. So yeah, we do have a map online. I'll get that in the chat for you unless John wants to, but I can do that right now actually. Um, sorry, while I type, it's annoying. Actually, I believe this is correct. If it's broken, tell me and I will look it up. You can look up your neighborhood team leaders there. So if you contact the team leader on that team, 80 some odd percent of teams have an active net right now. So that would be my recommendation to start with that team leader. So when they have meetings, I hate to say the word meetings, when they have workshops or exercises, they will open often to anyone in the community who wishes to come because, we're all in this together. We're training currently. So that would be a great first start to reach out to the team. Did that work, that link?
Yes.
Great. And that'll take you to our wiki, which we're updating that map, and eventually it'll take you to the wiki where you have all teams have their um, information posted.
And for those that may be just watching this for the first time and not in the chat, it's pbem.link/net-team-map or dash map.
I'll just add another way. You won't want to read this one out, but that's another way to find the text list link of all teams.
Great. We'll start to build out on our website for this committee the various resources and stuff. If we could get your slide deck and include these links, we'd love to be able to do that. That way, folks that may see this after will have all the resources to be able to connect where they need to go.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thank you for amplifying it. I really appreciate it. This is exactly how community resilience works. Is you're the community leaders sharing the word. So thank you for doing that, and thank you, John, again for making it happen.
I had one more question, but I want to see if anybody else in the group does, because it's not about net specific, though. Okay. Could you talk about resiliency hubs? What are they, and how does like a building or an organization stand a resiliency hub up?
Very good question. The answer is it's being determined. So they came through as state grants a couple years ago. And it was an inventive program. The state had Office of Emergency Management had money to invest in communities based on the ideas from the communities. So it was not a prescription from the government, which I think we can probably all agree does not work. Government can't show up and tell you how to do things for your community. So the idea was investing in various proposals that groups came up with, and everything from a physical facility with solar power and all that sort of thing to advanced PBAM. Actually, my bureau got one for doing some of those CPR classes for those nonprofit groups that we partner with. So we're actually finishing those up now. So definition of community resilience hub was really wide ranging. You'll find on the web in other cities there are specific things where you say this is a resilience hub and it's a facility and it has X, Y, and Z. So Oregon has not taken that approach so far because we wanted to mine the community, quite honestly, and find out the great ideas that people have and what is worth investing in, not trying to invent it from scratch and tell people what to do. So yeah, so it's not. There's no real good answer right now. I'm still waiting to see. I don't know when they're going to produce the results of what they did, but they literally. I know the people who went around every county in the state on a road show and really went out there and got the money out there.
All right. I guess we're coming to a close. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Keep your
much. I really
hands.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess we can stop the recording for this. I just